They lost everything just because of a fence. Not a lawsuit, not a fire, just a plain old wooden fence, the kind your granddad puts up to mark what's his. They thought I'd never dare fight back, not over something that small, not against an HOA president with more legal documents than friends. Was it worth it? You tell me. See, Karen believed sneaking onto my land at 2 in the morning, smashing my cabin fence, and quietly expanding the HOA grounds onto what belonged to my family was a perfect victory. She had people out there driving stakes into my soil, hammering up a sign for some community utility area, like the law itself was asleep at midnight. And I'll give her this, she planned it well. But the thing is, there was something Karen didn't know. I owned a card, and if I played it at the right moment, it'd flip the whole game on its head. I didn't need to shout, didn't need to touch anyone. I just needed to pull the right thread, and 3 days later, her little empire started to crack. You won't believe where she ended up. It's funny how quick it all started. I still remember that sound of hammers in the dead of night jolting me awake. My name's Marcus Chen. I'm 35, and for most of my life I'd kept to myself, working remote as a data analyst from this old family cabin on the edge of nowhere. My Irish grandparents left me this place 20 hectares, though honestly, I only ever used the couple right around the cabin. The rest, just wild pines hush, and the kind of silence that'll heal a man if he lets it. But that September night, something felt off. I heard voices, tools clanking. Thought maybe it was some local kids up to no good. But the closer I got, jeans barely buttoned, flashlight in hand, the more I realized this was a full-blown operation. 4 guys in matching Navy shirts, Pinewood HOA maintenance, tearing down my fence with crowbars measuring, working like a demolition crew. I'd never even heard of a Pinewood HOA. I sure as hell never signed up for one. As I crossed the yard, they all froze, looking to a white SUV parked under the trees. Out stepped a woman, 50-ish hair perfectly coiled into a bun. Even at that hour, wool coat over pajamas, clipboard in one hand, manila folder stuffed with paper in the other. Mr. Chen, I presume she called, giving me that smile, just enough teeth to look friendly, but nothing behind the eyes. I'm Karen Sutherland, president of the Pinewood Community HOA. We're expanding the community utility zone, Resolution 247B. She handed me documents, all legal letterhead references to easements and obligations looked real enough, but nothing added up. Ma'am, I'm not part of any HOA. This is private land. Always has been. Her eyes flickered just a flash, but she covered it quick. The previous owners, your grandparents, weren't actively managing boundaries. It happens, you know, when properties change hands. The men kept working while we talked. Every word she said felt like a threat, sugar-coated with neighborly concern. The utility expansion serves the greater good. I'm sure you understand the importance of being a good neighbor. She practically spit those words. I asked her to stop the work. She just shook her head, cool as ice. We can't afford delays. Permits are in order. File a complaint if you must, but this expansion will be done by morning. That was it. She got in her SUV and drove off, leaving her crew to finish. Standing there in the dark, I felt not angry exactly, focused, like I could hear my grandfather's voice, Marcus. The law isn't about winning, it's about keeping the peace. But sometimes keeping the peace means knowing when and how to fight. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my porch with black coffee, watching them drive those stakes, and felt something in my bones. This was bigger than a utility shed. Karen had planned this for months, probably longer. She knew my grandparents had passed. She knew I lived alone, and she counted on me rolling over. What she didn't count on was the old safe in my back room and what was inside it. That safe hadn't been opened since my grandfather's funeral. Combination was my grandmother's birthday. Inside a stack of yellowed papers. The original deed from 1962, signed and sealed by the county with coordinates that made my heart skip. I didn't just own the 2 hectares. My family owned all 20 every inch, including Karen's fancy ranch and stables. Everything she thought was hers was still by law mine. I pulled up Google Earth, checked the boundaries, double-checked the deed, and felt the ground shift under my feet. First thing, I called my neighbor, Jake Torres, whose family had lived there longer than mine. "Marcus, your folks used to own land all the way to the creek where Karen built her ranch a couple of years back." Then Jake let something slip that made my jaw clench. "She was at my shop a few months ago asking about your schedule, your boundaries, all that. Thought she was just nosy, but now..." The pieces fell together. Karen had been researching me, my land, my habits, everything. I realized I needed help. That's when I called Sarah Washington, a local land law specialist. "If those documents are real," she said, "and Karen's only been there 2 years, she's trespassing, pure and simple." We spent the day organizing evidence while Karen played the role of the righteous president, holding meetings, serving coffee, playing the victim to neighbors who didn't know the truth. Sarah's research unearthed the rest. Karen had applied for adverse possession 8 months ago. She'd tried this with other properties too, always targeting the elderly or folks who just inherited. She'd created the Pinewood HOA as her own authority to back these grabs. She'd even left a paper trail, emails official, minutes, every move calculated to look legit, even while she was forging documents to cover her tracks. Twist is, it wasn't just about me. Mrs. Dorothy Kim, a retired county records clerk, showed up with copies of documents Karen had requested on other properties, targeting people like me, new owners, widows, folks unlikely to fight back. Dorothy had made duplicates because she'd felt something was off. Turns out Karen was running a pattern, systematically grabbing land wherever she found weakness. By day 3, we had everything. Filed a quiet title action. Served an unlawful detainer notice. Trespass claims. Every document filed with surgical precision, just like my grandfather would have done. And then the cracks appeared. Karen got served legal papers in front of her whole neighborhood at her own coffee gathering. The board called emergency meetings. Her mortgage company, spooked by the title dispute, froze her loan. The local paper ran the story, HOA president accused of building ranch on neighbor's land. Even her own daughter called furious after finding out the truth. You'd think that'd be the end, but Karen wasn't the type to surrender. No, she filed a harassment complaint, accused me of intimidation, painted herself as the bullied widow. But Sarah found the smoking gun. Karen had forged a 1963 deed, supposedly transferring land from my grandfather to a man who died a month before the date on the document. That was it. The DA took notice, charges got filed for fraud, forgery, and more. The courtroom was packed when we finally faced off. Karen came in with her lawyer, dressed to look frail, spun a sob story about her retirement, her hard work, her good faith purchase. But Rebecca, the PI I'd hired, dropped the hammer: audio recordings, bank records, evidence of a dozen other land grabs, even Karen herself on tape, saying she targeted loners and old folks. When that played, her whole story fell apart. Judge Martinez ruled in my favor. All land returned to me. Karen ordered to pay restitution and criminal charges forwarded to the DA. She left the courtroom in handcuffs, reputation in ashes, her neighbors turning away. 6 months later, Karen was standing in my kitchen brewing coffee, helping run the Chen Family Community Center. Judge sentenced her to prison and community service, teaching property law workshops, warning others not to follow her path. "Don't be like me," the banner read over her Saturday classes. I never expected to offer her a job, but maybe my grandfather was right. Sometimes keeping the peace means giving people a chance to do better. The redemption wasn't instant. Karen had to face the people she'd hurt: Dorothy, Kim, Jake, even her own daughter. Week by week, she taught the community how to spot scams, how to read deeds, how not to fall for the tricks she once used. Folks started coming around, not to forgive, maybe, but to watch her make things right. 1 year after the fence broke, I found a photo of my grandfather and Henry Morrison, Karen's old ranch's first owner, standing where the caretaker's cabin sits now. Turns out my grandfather once helped Henry settle a boundary dispute. No money, no drama, just a handshake. That's what I want this place to be. Not a battleground. A place where folks look out for each other no matter what came before. Now, when Karen tends the garden where her stakes once marked stolen land, I think about what justice really looks like. Not revenge, just truth and a shot at something better for all of us. They lost everything just because of a fence. But sometimes losing it all lets you figure out who you want to be. If you've ever had to stand up to someone who thought you'd never fight back, or if you've got your own neighborhood story where the quiet one turned out to be the most dangerous, share it below. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it just means holding the line and waiting for the truth to come out. If you made it this far, thanks for listening, and remember, you never really know who owns the ground under your feet until you're ready to dig.